Do you have a story to share with the world? Of course you do. We all have stories to share. An Anchor podcast allows you to share your interests in a way that connects to others all across the globe. If you have been considering starting your own podcast and don't know where to begin, Anchor makes it easy to record, edit, and publish with the click of a button. You can even add music. Whether it's crime dramas, self-improvement, paranormal adventures, or tips about parenting, you too can share your unique imprint on the world. Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. You've got this. I believe in you. Welcome to the Existential Empath Podcast. My name is Tanya, and I am an intuitive empath. My intention is to share valuable tools and techniques that I have learned so you can tap into your own inner healer naturally and intuitively. I have guest Michelle Henderson here with me today. Michelle has worked in education as a teacher, an educational diagnostician, and a behavioral analyst for 30 years. She taught children with autism and later opened a learning center teaching children social skills through drama techniques. How cool is that? Now Michelle is a spiritual advisor and a psychic medium who helps intuitive children embrace their gifts. She is also the author of Spiritual Nurturing for Intuitive Children, training parents to embrace and enhance their psychic child's abilities. Welcome, Michelle. I'm super excited to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you. I am looking forward to this conversation.
I am too. And this is what we're going to dive into today. We're going to talk about embracing and nurturing intuitive children's abilities. So, Michelle, let's first off start off with, how do parents even identify an intuitive child?
And it's very interesting. It varies depending upon the age of the child, but I will start just with the general characteristics. Many times they'll go to their mom and dad and go, you know what? I have an imaginary friend. And, the parents are going, oh, that's nice, honey. I'm glad that you got a playmate. And then it turns into, well, it's really an older man. And then they're,
That was me. That was me as a kid.
Yeah, so you saw an older man.
I didn't see the older man, but I definitely had imaginary friends, a whole lot of them, and they were all a variety of ages.
Oh, that's really cool. That's really cool. So so that's when the parent starts diving in. Well, what do you mean an older man? Okay, tell me more. And then they may describe a grandfather, that they've had in the past that has crossed over that they have not even seen, and can describe this grandfather to a T. So, and yes, so an imaginary friend can also be an animal. It can be a fairy. It can be so many different things. It doesn't have to be, looked human or anything. It could even be alien. We don't know.
I think I even had a dragon at one time. Yeah.
Did you? Okay. Yeah. And see, my husband, he had a little bear, like the Bernstein bears.
Oh, yeah.
So it really depends on the child, and it really depends on the spirit. And a lot of times they just want to play with the child, have a good time, be noticed. And then empathy. A lot of younger children may not notice as much, but as the child gets older, they may start feeling all the feelings of their classmates. They may be feeling, different energies in an environment, if it's a happy environment versus a sad environment. I know in middle school, I would come home exhausted. And at that time, you don't know if it's your feelings or if it's, somebody else's feelings. It's hard to really distinguish that. And so that's another thing. If they're crying all the time and they just don't know what to do with it.
Or they don't want to go to school. That was something that I just was like, I'm so tired. I couldn't get out of bed. I didn't want to go to school. And that's that key factor of being empathic and picking up on the subtle energies of everyone around you.
And so I bet you were also the one that didn't want to go to the mall, or it's, busy places.
Or the thrift shop, any of that stuff. No.
Oh, yes. Antique stores, because that's where you start picking up on the energy and everything. And that's exactly what I had as well. So they may also remember past lives.
Yes.
So, and I know that science has actually proven this more and more. And I think we're being able to see this, because I know that there was a show on Netflix that actually dove into that.
Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And then they may have dreams that are so real that they can actually control them like a video game, and that they're in different, what am I say, environments or different.
Like a
Uh,
virtual reality.
Yes, virtual different realities. That's what I was looking for. So, if they just, or they go, it's just so real. It just, I can't believe it. Or they get a connection with spirit.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And a lot of times if they start feeling spirit, they have those dreams, they become afraid. So they can't sleep at night.
Yeah, I was going to say that. What about
Yeah.
those children that are like, there's a monster under the bed or in the
Yeah.
closet? Are those the intuitive kids that are picking up on those subtle energies?
Absolutely. And so that's why it's good for the parents to really get further information. Now, it could be that maybe they watch a scary movie and they're just kind of scaring themselves.
Mhm.
But again, a parent really needs to look into it. Sometimes these children will be so close to animals.
Yeah.
They'll know exactly and feel what an animal feels and just have that connection. A lot of our kids are connected with horses. That's why they do a lot of horse therapy
Mhm.
for, especially children with under the spectrum or any type of disability, because those horses can connect in with you spiritually.
That's neat. That's really
Yes.
neat.
Yes. Yes.
So
And
how young can these kids start developing these gifts?
okay, well, development, it depends upon your definition of developing them.
Okay. Or
Because
recognizing these
yes,
gifts.
exactly. So whenever they're younger, that's when they start really needing to recognize it. Or, okay, I shouldn't say that because I'm going to take back that statement. They already recognize it when they're younger. Okay. But the parents need to start recognizing it and developing it and embracing it and talking to their child and not being afraid when their child comes to them and say, guess what's happening? But as they get older, yes, they can start developing these gifts. It's like anything else. If you want to work with it and have that control, then little exercises will get you along the way.
Uh-huh.
And that's what is so important, because what's scary is if you can't control it. Kind of like what you did, you came home, you're exhausted, from school, and you don't have the energy to move on. Well, that can be fixed. That can, you can shield yourself. You can learn those different exercises to
Yeah.
keep everyone else's energy out. So that's why it's very, very important for a child to understand what's going on and what to do if it becomes overwhelming.
Yeah, and I guess it's important for the parent to understand it too, because they're the ones kind of assisting the child, depending, especially if they're really young and they're starting to pick
Right.
up on, all of the energies around them. And so do you recognize a lot of parents denying these abilities that these children, have? And if so, why do they do that?
Okay, so a lot of the parents that come to me usually are seeking help. So they're not denying it or kind of pushing it. They're just wanting the knowledge and the information.
Mhm.
But there are a lot of parents at the same time who, yes, will push it away. And the number one word I can tell you is because of fear,
Yeah.
because they are afraid of it. And, with me, I was grown up in I don't want to say an over religious,
Mhm.
community, but it did have 3 universities that were all Christian based.
Uh-huh.
So a lot of times it's like, oh, you cannot talk about that. We will not go there. So they would try to shut me down. And when I say they, it's my friends.
Uh-huh.
My parents didn't know what to do. They're just going, oh, that's nice. It's your imagination, that type of thing. So but to me, it's fear and not having the accurate knowledge of knowing that this is more spiritual than anything else.
Yeah, and I think, I remember, gosh, as little as almost maybe 3 or 4, being able to telepathically communicate with animals. Like I remember this very, very vividly. And then I would go to
Wow.
school and I would tell my friends that I could talk to the deer, I could talk to the dogs and the cows, because I lived in the country. And they're like, you're crazy. I just remember as a kid, the peer pressure set in. And then I began to question, am I weird? Am I unique? Am I different?
Mhm.
And I think over time, I started to shut off those abilities that were very natural to me as a
Mhm.
child. And now as an adult, I'm starting to tune more into them and it's bringing back those memories of how easy it was, for me to be able to communicate in that way. And so, do you see that often where, maybe the parents or even the child at school is kind of being, kind of pressured to think that they're weird or strange, and then the child starts to shut those abilities off?
Actually, yes. So I have talked to a lady who was a parent, or is a parent. I spoke to a parent whose child was actually on the A&E Psychic Kids on
Mhm.
the very first episode.
Oh, I've seen that
And
show. Okay.
yes, yes. So Ellen herself is very intuitive, so she was very accepting of it. But the reason why they reached out to the show, the members of the show to come and help, is because he was being bullied at school.
Oh.
And because you can't give this away. I mean, they will write it in their journal at school
Mhm.
and they'll talk about it because they don't know any different.
Of
And he was in
course.
elementary. I believe it was fourth grade whenever it started. And so that's when the parents knew that they needed to step in so that he would embrace it.
Uh-huh.
And she actually went in and talked to the classroom and explained to the students what was going on. And I thought, oh, how awesome is that?
That's awesome. And that the
So
teacher's supportive. That's really
yes,
cool. Mhm.
yes, absolutely. But I think eventually they found a different school, which is so nice that we have these opportunities now to find a different school who actually embraced it.
Harry Potter mystery schools. I'm all about that.
Yeah, but hopefully you get to survive those schools.
Yeah. So, Michelle, when people come to you, when parents come to you, what are some common questions that they have, asking about their children, that are intuitive?
Yes, and it's very interesting. It's along the same lines as what we're talking about. Is it safe? Is it okay? Am I doing the right things to help my child?
Uh-huh.
Should I embrace it? Or because I'll give you an instance of one time. It was a little bitty girl, 3 years old, and she was seeing spirits in the house that had been there because it was an older home.
Mhm.
So it was almost, I don't want to say earthbound spirits, but they were kind of just hanging
Disembodied
out.
spirits,
Yeah,
maybe. Mhm.
exactly. And she was talking to him and so forth. And the dad said, well, I'm kind of afraid. What if it's somebody that's evil, an
Yeah.
evil spirit? And I said, well, is your child scared? And he goes, no. And I said, do you feel scared? You're asking me, but do you feel afraid of it? And he gets going, no.
Uh-huh.
And I said, well, has it tried to throw things at you?
Or hurt
No.
you.
I said,
Mhm.
yes. And I said, it's safe. And I said, and it sounded as the more I talked about to him, he had the psychic ability. And I said, so talk to your child about it and really embrace it. And so a lot of times, again, it's just fear-based. And sometimes it takes 20 minutes to talk to them and they're okay. They're going, okay, I'm doing everything right.
So, with that said, how many parents do you see who are actually intuitive as well? When you start to realize the child are usually the parents intuitive too?
Basically all of them. Yes. And it's funny because the more I talk to them and I kind of explain the different experiences and kind of say, oh, well, that is normal for an intuitive child. They start having, it's a lot of times we'll shut it down. We won't think about those memories,
Mhm.
but then these memories will start, coming up and they're going, oh my gosh, I was like that. I just thought I was a sensitive child that cried all the time,
Uh-huh.
over anything. And it's like, well, there's a purpose on that, and then they say, well, my mother was like that. It's like, yes, but
It's
a
like it
lot of
runs in the
times,
family.
exactly. But yeah, so I always tell them, okay, if you are intuitive or you're finding out you're intuitive and your child is intuitive, go with your child, do these exercises with your child so that you can go through it and experience it together. Because that way it's almost like, okay, just like a family goes to a church,
Uh-huh.
they're doing religion together. It's basically the same thing. Be spiritual with your child and go through these exercises, and that will teach you so much more than having the child do it on their own.
Yeah, so
So, yes.
that's really neat. Can you share one exercise with the listeners?
Easy, easy, easy. Okay. So there's a couple of exercises. Okay. So there's some yoga techniques that you can do with a child. And there's so many videos out there that you can do because yoga is totally different
Mhm.
than adults do. It's more imaginatory. It's more storytelling, that kind of thing. And they say an affirmation as they do it. Okay, like I can do this if they're doing, something that's more grounded, like the warrior pose. And the
Okay.
warrior pose is not as difficult,
As it
not
looks.
as difficult, for a child. Because you don't want to hurt their muscles or their bones when they're younger growing up. And then with breathing exercises, there's different things that you can do so that when they get anxious or they need to ground themselves, they know how to breathe in and out. You can get one of those spheres I'm trying to think the name of it. But it's kind of like a toy, you go in and out.
Uh-huh.
Adults can learn how to breathe, as well. But as you open the sphere, then it kind of goes out, and then you breathe in, it goes in.
Like a slinky?
It's almost like a slinky. Let me actually, I know that we're doing audio, or I would go and get it and show it to you. But it's a Hoberman sphere.
Oh,
Okay. Hoberman. Hoberman. It's actually a toy, and you can buy it in the store, and it's always fun to watch it go out and then in, out and then in. Those are a few exercises that you can do. And then meditation. If a child is 2 years old or 3 years old, you can meditate with a child for 2 minutes or 3 minutes, depending on their age, and it adds up. But meditation is just good for anybody to, ground and slow down that mind, especially when they're younger.
absolutely. And that's excellent for adults too. I just did a show on overcoming the resistance to meditation. And I think starting out really young with children is so imperative. If I would have learned this when I was young, it'd be a lot easier.
Right. Absolutely. And I think children, especially children that are intuitive, they are going to be more hyperactive.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have more energy, and their minds are going 100 miles an hour. So it's very important for them to know how to breathe, take those deep breaths, count to 5, and meditate.
Absolutely. So, Michelle, you worked with autistic children. I actually was in a relationship with someone who had 2 autistic children. And what are your thoughts around that? Are these children intuitive? And I know what my thoughts are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I love to call them kaleidoscope children, because, and I'll tell you why. A lot of times, whenever I was working with a child with autism, they love the geometric patterns. They love the science stuff, the different colors, they would be mesmerized. And a lot of times they would look off in the distance, and I'd be going, what are you looking at? Okay. For one, they may be looking at another spirit that's talking to them and playing with them. But also I think they can see the different energy grids on the earth, and they can see the different colors. And so a lot of times that's why you see them have a meltdown whenever, you're bringing them back into our earth plane.
The third dimension.
Kind of exactly. It's almost like, those virtual reality, where you can really see different patterns. That kind of is kind of what they're looking at, but without the set. So that's why I love to call them kaleidoscope children. And yes, so telepathically, they can actually communicate that way as well. You just have to listen.
Absolutely. And that's how I was tuning into them. We would be playing, and I would be speaking in my mind, and then they would be answering me, and I'm like, whoa, like this is amazing. And it was like just very natural to them. And these 2 children were twins, so they were just back and forth, with one another. And then I kind of bopped in, and then it just was really, it was really expansive for me, because it was like, oh my gosh, like these kids are just so much more advanced in frequency than some of us are here on the planet.
Absolutely. And a lot of times, how you can move your energy back and forth and kind of extend it to somebody. If I did have a child that was having a meltdown and they were just overstimulated at some point, I would use my energy to try to calm them down. And after a while, you could kind of see that happening as well.
That's really neat. That's great. And so have you worked with parents with autistic children, and, how open are they to, understanding that their kids are intuitive?
Well, because I worked in the education system, and, worked for companies, and it was medical practice. I was not able to say anything, that type of thing. It was more political. Now there was a parent that when I taught drama, to children, that's when I was really able to open up. And I did open up to one parent, and she was kind of okay with it, but didn't really want to talk past that conversation,
Uh-huh.
if that makes any sense.
Yeah, because it's like I do feel like a lot of the parents are searching for more physical,
Yes.
reasons versus the
Right.
spiritual aspect. When really it's these kids are, they're being born. Even the kids now, more and more, are being born at different frequencies, and they're holding
Mhm.
more information than we are, and they're showing us, the way. And it's like I don't have children myself, but I love being around kids because they see things and then it kind of activates me, and I'm like, whoa, it's just really fun being around them.
I love it. I love it. And you know what? And I think that is so interesting that you say that, because I think conversations like this are so important to educate others so that these kids can be accepted. Because these are the kids that, if they're not accepted, they're going to rebel a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I was
So
rebelling a little bit.
I know, right? It's like, what? You don't accept me as I am? But you know what? They're so much stronger as I was as a child. A
Mhm.
lot of times they're not as much of a people pleaser as what I used to be, and I think that is important. And I think good for you, for showing us who you truly are.
Absolutely. And that's important because I do feel that these children are leading the way to a new earth, to a new way of living for humanity. And, whether they're bucking the system is exactly what they're doing. They're breaking the societal mold. They're breaking out of the matrix, so to speak. And these kids, it's just, and I guess, I do feel like I was incarnated this lifetime to not have children. But with that said, I find myself around a lot of children. And so it's just
Well,
having that, yeah, that playful kind of frequency, around it. But I feel like if we really tune into our kids, we can learn so much from
mhm.
them, and they can show us a new way of living. Absolutely.
Yes. And even, and that's my number one thing that I'd always tell people is the kids that I worked with, hopefully they learned from me as much as I learned from them.
Mhm.
And it's so spiritual when you work with them. And maybe if you feel very good around that energy, maybe spirit is trying to tell you something,
Maybe.
Tanya. Maybe it's saying, maybe you need to be working with kids.
Yeah, you're probably right. And I do love being around. Now, I say that it's usually like 6-year-olds to 12-year-olds is probably, if I had to really put. But I have a friend whose daughter is 10, and when I was home visiting my family, she was talking about telepathy and all these different things. And I'm like, where did you learn this? Did you learn this at school? She goes, no, I just know it. And I'm like, really?
Oh, wow.
Like, so it was really neat. And so I do feel like I connect really easily with children. And no, but it's really fun. But Michelle, let's talk a little bit about your book, and what is it about, and how can people find it?
Okay. And I do want to explain a little bit how I decided to put it all together. And
Yeah.
of course, we all do whenever we're meditating, we kind of get downloads, we get information, that kind of thing from
Uh-huh.
spirit and from the universe. And so this was during the time that I was actually taking workshops, because I came out of the spiritual closet
I
as a
think we all
psychic.
kind of have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right when COVID happened. So when I was taking a workshop, how to develop your psychic abilities, I had this thought, I was a teacher, I was an educator, I worked with these children. I've always been an advocate for these kids. How can I help kids that are intuitive? Because I met so many people in my classes that went through the same experience as I did. And
Wow.
they go, you know what? Yeah, if I was embraced, I probably would have held on to it.
Uh-huh.
So what I did is I took everything that I learned during the psychic classes, the workshops, that I learned how to be in tune to my gifts. What I did is I brought it down to level for a child. And then, because I've worked with families under the autism spectrum, I thought, you know what, these families need, like, I don't want to call it family training, because they're going to get in there too and do it with their child,
Oh,
but kind of
fun.
give them the knowledge.
Like collaborative.
And so,
Mhm.
yes. And so so that's what the book started out with, is how light workers can help these families embrace these kids. But now the families are telling me I can do this on my own. I don't need you. It's
Hey,
like, oh,
it really is just planting the seed, and then here, you take it and you
yes.
grow with it.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. But what it does have are the exercises that we just talked about that they can do for their child, depending on what level or what age they are, because each age, levels is different and each child is different. Like a 16-year-old can probably actually start doing readings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, where, a lot of people tend to say no, but I'm thinking some kids know more about the world than I do at 16, so you just never know. But if you are kind of looking at the book and you're not for sure if it's for you, you can always go to my website and download the first chapter. And then if you go, okay, this is for me, then you can go to Amazon or any bookstore will have it.
That's great. So what is your website, Michelle? How can
Okay.
people reach you?
Okay, so it's michellehendersonmedium.com.
Awesome. So we're going to wrap this show up. So is there anything else that you'd like to share to close it out?
Okay, so this is not only speaking of the families, but if you feel that you yourself have intuitiveness or you're psychic, or it's not your imagination, okay? It's not like you're going crazy. Embrace the side of you. Don't care what other people think about you, because you never know. If you embrace this part of yourself, they might go, oh my gosh, I want to be around that person. So embrace it and just show people who you truly are.
I love that. I love that advice, because I think we do. It's like you said, we're all in the spiritual closet. And then once we come out, it's like, I always think of Glinda, the Good Witch on Wizard of Oz. She's like, come out, wherever you are. And all the little munchkins come out. It's like, once you come out, then everybody starts to kind of come out and say, hey, that's me too, or that's my child, or that's my husband, or that's my wife, or, whatever. And so it's just giving yourself permission to do it. And then that allows others permission to do it as well. So I think that's a great note to end on. I appreciate you coming on the show today, Michelle, and sharing all of your knowledge and wisdom with children. And, thank you for all that you're doing in the world and all the energy that you are putting out there and helping these kids and these parents to understand their intuitive abilities.
Absolutely. And the same for you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You deserve to navigate your life as an empath in alignment with health, happiness, and abundance. To learn more about the services that I provide, including Beyond Quantum Healing Hypnosis, EFT Tapping, and the Emotion Code, visit my website at www.thesoulcafe.org.